You probably don't realize what's been growing inside you all this time. It's not a monster. It's not a hero. It's something far more dangerous, a version of you that has learned to survive without needing anyone. And that alone makes you a threat to this world. You've spent so much time alone that people no longer know how to read you. They mistake your silence for emptiness, your detachment for weakness. But what they don't understand is that your silence is not absence. It's a weapon. While they scramble to be noticed, you've learned to move unseen. You've become a shadow that watches, listens, and remembers everything. You know people's weaknesses long before they ever discover yours, and that unsettles them. Because dependence is how the world controls most people. They want you predictable, soft, desperate for validation. But you've learned the one rule they can't accept. When you need no one can control you. You've lived through loneliness the way others survive wars. Hungry, anxious, sleepless, fighting battles no one saw. But look at you now. You're still breathing. Colder, sharper, unshakable. You learned in silence how to see people clearly, how their smiles hide hostility, how their words contradict their eyes, how truth isn't in what they say, but in the pauses between sentences. You've learned to listen to what isn't spoken, and that ability gives you an advantage. You don't interrupt, you don't rush. You let them reveal themselves completely, and only then do you act. The first foundation of your strength is awareness. The second is your precision in who you allow near you. You no longer collect people, you curate them. You seek quality over quantity because a weak ally is worse than a declared enemy. You've stopped trying to convince, to rescue, to drag others who refuse to walk. And though that choice isolates you, you pay that price gladly because you finally understand. There's nothing lonelier than being surrounded by the wrong people. The third foundation, the most misunderstood, is anonymity. You've mastered the art of being unseen. While the world chases attention, you chase results. They crave recognition. You crave progress. They broadcast their every step. You move in silence. You don't need to announce victories. You simply arrive with outcomes no one saw coming. Because the most devastating strike is always the one they never expected. Your solitude was never a punishment. It was a forge. It carved you patiently, like water shaping stone. It forced you to meet the parts of yourself most people run from. It made you self-reliant, self-aware, and impossible to manipulate. While they drown in noise, you found strength in silence. Silence didn't break you, it built you. Noise distracts. Silence refines. Now every decision you make belongs to you alone. Your time, your mind. Your will, they're under your command. So remember what your solitude has taught you. Don't sell your independence for comfort. Don't trade your privacy for applause. Don't exchange your anonymity for attention. You've crossed a border that few even see. You no longer belong to the herd. And once you've lived free of its noise, there's no going back. Because once you've tasted the power of being alone, you realize that solitude didn't make you weaker. It made you unreadable. And unreadable people are dangerous. The world fears what it can't predict. And when people can't read you, they invent stories to fill the gap. They whisper, speculate, obsess. Because your calm unsettles them. You don't react when they expect you to. You don't feed their games. They can't decide if you're preparing to strike or simply don't care. That uncertainty is your fortress. Unpredictability, as Machiavelli would say, is the tallest wall any ruler can build. An opponent who can't anticipate your move has already lost before the first step. But power always comes with a test. For you, it's the temptation to break your own silence, to prove, to explain. to announce that you're still in the game. That is the trap. The moment you reveal your strategy, you hand your enemies the map. That's why you've learned to train your ego like a wild animal, feed it enough to keep it alive, but never enough to let it rule you. Your ego wants recognition. It wants noise. You deny it both. And that discipline is what separates those who talk about power from those who quietly build it. This is where your solitude evolves into something higher: strategic patience. You've learned that waiting is not weakness, it's preparation. It's the difference between dreamers and architects. Dreamers reveal their ideas too soon and watch them die in the light. Architects wait until their structure stands unshakable before unveiling it. You've learned that time is not your enemy, it's your weapon. Every moment you remain silent, every second you conserve energy, your advantage grows. And while others waste themselves chasing attention, you're sharpening every unseen move, building a legacy in the shadows. Because when you finally step into the light, the game will already be over, and only you will know when it ended. You've reached a point where emotions no longer pull your strings. While others are trapped inside their own reactions, you've learned to move with purpose, not impulse. They lash out when insulted, explain when misunderstood, and spend their energy trying to prove themselves. But not you. You've detached. You've learned that every reaction is a form of surrender, a sign that someone else is controlling the rhythm. You've seen it clearly. Most people don't act, they react. They move when provoked. They speak when triggered. They decide only when pressured. Their behavior is dictated by emotions, not strategy. But you've escaped that trap. You act when it serves you. You wait when it doesn't. That's why your moves carry weight, because they are chosen, not forced. This detachment is dangerous power. When you no longer crave immediate results, when your emotions no longer dictate your path, you become immune to manipulation. Flattery doesn't seduce you. Threats don't intimidate you. You can't be bribed with validation or paralyzed by fear. That's the point where most will never follow, because detachment demands strength few possess. It's not about not caring. It's about not being owned by your cares. It's the ability to act without seeking permission from your feelings, to decide from clarity, not chaos. And when you reach that state, something shifts. Your life becomes clean. You stop collecting distractions. You stop chasing approval. You stop explaining your path to those who can't even walk beside you. You realize that the real luxury isn't having more, it's needing less. Less noise, less company, less validation, less chaos. Everything you remove creates space for what's essential. It's like clearing a minefield, step by step, until only solid ground remains. And on that ground, every action you take becomes deliberate, focused, unstoppable. That clarity gives birth to a new vision. You start seeing people for who they truly are, not through desire, not through hope, but through their patterns. You see the liar's nervous smile, the opportunist's calculated kindness, the false friend's half-hearted loyalty, and for the first time, your heart doesn't flinch. You simply note it coldly, precisely, and move accordingly. Because solitude gives you something society never could, X-ray vision for human nature. You stop being fooled by words. You read intentions like maps. You sense manipulation before it's spoken. And once you see through people, you can never unsee it. Your mind becomes a laboratory. You dissect your own flaws, your mistakes, your weaknesses, not to hate yourself, but to refine yourself. You become both architect and destroyer, tearing down what's outdated inside you, building what's unbreakable. This process is lonely, but it's the loneliness of transformation, and that solitude becomes sacred. Because while others need spectators to feel alive, you can exist in silence and still move mountains. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards precision. You don't need to shout to be heard, you need to strike at the right time. While others broadcast every minor success, you build something so solid it doesn't need advertising. When it appears, it demands attention. And here's the irony, your very existence, once ignored, now becomes a quiet disturbance in others. You don't attack anyone. You don't compete. You simply exist on a higher frequency. And that, alone, is enough to make others uneasy. Your calm makes them restless. Your silence exposes their noise. Your self-sufficiency reveals their dependency. And deep down, they hate it, because your presence reminds them that they could be free too, but they'd rather stay comfortable in their chains. You've burned the bridge back to that world. You no longer belong to it. You've stepped outside the economy of approval, where people trade authenticity for acceptance. You can't be bought with flattery, and you can't be controlled through fear. That makes you the most dangerous kind of person. A free one. And freedom, in a society built on control, is the ultimate rebellion. This is when you discover the law of scarcity. It doesn't just apply to money or resources, it applies to presence. You limit access to yourself, and suddenly, your value multiplies. Most people waste their energy trying to be everywhere, posting, explaining, performing. But in doing so, they become replaceable. You do the opposite. You appear rarely, but when you do, everyone feels it. That is the law of mystery. Scarcity creates intrigue, and intrigue creates influence. You don't have to chase attention when people are busy wondering about you. But mystery is fragile. It can vanish the second you over-explain yourself. Every justification is an open door for someone to walk into your mind. Every time you share too much, you give away the map to your inner world. So you've learned the sacred rule. Not everyone has earned the right to know you. Transparency is a privilege, not an obligation. Even those close to you must earn your truth. Not through flattery, not through demand, but through consistency and loyalty tested over time. Because solitude didn't disconnect you from the world, it elevated you above it. You became a watcher. A sentinel at the highest tower, not running from the battle but studying the entire field before deciding when to strike. That height gives you something rare perspective. You see the whole map while others are lost in the maze. You're not retreating, you're commanding. Solitude isn't your prison, it's your war room. From there, you control when to engage, when to vanish, when to let them believe they've won, only to reappear when it's too late for them to recover. Because power isn't constant aggression, it's choosing when to act. Used constantly, power decays. Reserved power multiplies. While they exhaust themselves trying to stay relevant, you're building something that doesn't fade with trends. A presence that can disappear and still dominate the room. That's the secret. True power is not in showing up everywhere. It's in knowing when to appear so precisely that the whole world has to stop and notice. You've reached the level where your patience itself becomes a weapon. Time bends around your discipline. While others chase quick validation, you build foundations that last decades. You're no longer seduced by speed because you've learned that haste is a gift to your enemies. They waste energy reacting. You conserve it calculating. Every minute you hold still while they scramble, your control deepens. And then something fascinating begins to happen. You move beyond their emotional reach. They stay trapped in their constant loop of approval, gossip, and reaction. You don't. You no longer dance to the rhythm of the herd. You've stepped outside of it. You watch people destroy themselves with their own impulses, defending every attack, explaining every rumor, spending their energy trying to be understood by those who will never understand them. But you've realized something Machiavelli knew centuries ago. The one who defends himself against everything becomes a prisoner of his enemies. The one who ignores the irrelevant becomes untouchable. And that's you now. Your calm is not passivity, it's armor. Your silence is not weakness, it's focus. Your indifference is not coldness, it's control. At this stage, solitude stops being a phase. It becomes your natural environment. Not isolation, but command. You choose when to be seen and when to vanish. You allow people to underestimate you, to forget you, because when you reappear, the impact is unforgettable. This is what the weak never understand. It's not about disappearing out of fear. It's about timing your appearance for maximum effect. Like a predator that lets the forest grow quiet before the strike, you let the world get comfortable with your silence. And when you return, everything shifts. This is what Machiavelli meant by the art of not being seen until it's too late. It's not hiding, it's camouflage. You shape your environment so your absence feels ordinary, and your presence feels like an earthquake. You've trained your mind like an intelligence system, analyzing patterns, predicting weaknesses, seeing 2 moves ahead while everyone else plays checkers. You've learned to let time do part of the work for you, because time destroys the careless, and it rewards the patient. This mastery of time gives you an even greater gift, the wisdom to choose which battles are not worth fighting, because now you understand. Not every attack deserves a response. Not every opportunity deserves your energy. Not every fight is worth the victory it offers. Most people confuse movement with progress, noise with impact, activity with accomplishment. But you've evolved. You can watch a storm pass without stepping into it. You can see a trap disguised as an opportunity and walk away smiling. You can let others burn themselves out chasing relevance while you preserve your fire for the moments that actually matter. That restraint is terrifying to those who don't have it. They don't understand how you can be calm when provoked, silent when challenged, still when tempted. But that's because you've learned something they never will. Control isn't about domination. It's about freedom. When power stops being a performance and becomes a discipline, you stop chasing recognition and start shaping outcomes. You don't act to impress, you act to advance. You don't move to be seen, you move to win. You don't seek revenge, you build situations where revenge becomes irrelevant. That's when the shift happens. You're no longer perceived as just another player in the game. You become the board itself. They don't even realize they're moving according to your structure, that every one of their choices was already predicted and neutralized. People start reacting to your silence. They adjust their tone when you enter the room. They hesitate before speaking your name. Some will call you intimidating. Others will call you distant. But all of them will feel your gravity. That's the paradox of power. The less you show, the more they feel. Your absence speaks louder than their shouting. Your stillness exposes their chaos. Your discipline unsettles them because it mirrors everything they lack. And yet, there's a danger here. The higher your control, the greater the temptation to prove it, to flex your dominance, to show your hand. But Machiavelli warned against this. Real power doesn't need to be displayed. Power revealed too often loses its mystery, and mystery is half of influence. So you resist that urge. You let others wonder what you're planning. You let them speculate. You let them talk themselves into fear. Because the truth is simple. The moment they start trying to predict you, you've already won. You've stopped being reactive. You've stopped being available. You've stopped being explainable. And that's when something inside you changes. You stop needing victory to feel powerful. Your power exists in restraint. You know you could destroy, expose, or dominate. You just choose not to. Because now, control over yourself is more intoxicating than control over anyone else. You've turned detachment into strategy, solitude into command, silence into a language only the powerful understand. You've become the rarest kind of person, someone who operates on timing, not emotion, who acts from vision, not vanity, who doesn't chase relevance, because relevance chases them. And while the world exhausts itself trying to stay seen, you're quietly setting the stage for your next appearance. One move that will remind them why disappearing was the smartest thing you ever did. You've learned to use absence as a weapon not to hide, but to heighten your power. When people can no longer predict your presence, they start imagining you everywhere. They wonder what you're doing, where you are, what you're planning. And that uncertainty is more powerful than any public display could ever be. You've become something society doesn't know how to handle. A person who cannot be easily categorized, decoded, or controlled. They can't define you, so they speculate. They can't read you, so they invent stories. They can't anticipate you, so they fear you. That fear is your protection. Because when people can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. And that's the purest form of control. This is where most fail. They ruin their mystery by explaining themselves. They defend their choices to people who were never meant to understand them. They justify their moves as if truth alone could buy them peace. But every justification is a confession. Every explanation is a surrender of control. You've learned the opposite. You let silence be the unanswered question that echoes in their minds. You let them wonder, because wondering costs them energy, and you collect it. Machiavelli said that the ruler must know when to reveal and when to conceal, when to strike and when to stand still. You've mastered both. You reveal only enough to feed their curiosity, never enough to give them clarity. Your silence becomes an incomplete map, one they'll spend their lives trying to finish. And while they're busy guessing, you're building. Because that's what power truly is. Not noise, not dominance, not aggression, but the ability to move while everyone else is frozen trying to decode you. You now understand that solitude isn't a shield. It's a tower. From it, you can see what others cannot. You can watch the small battles of ego, envy, and fear unfold beneath you and decide exactly when to intervene, or not at all. That distance gives you the most valuable resource of all, perspective. It's not about escaping the world. It's about seeing the entire board before you play. You've stopped fighting every small fight because you're focused on winning the war. And in that war, timing is everything. Because the one who controls when and how things happen controls the ending. This is what Machiavelli called the art of invisible strategy. It's not about force. It's about creating an atmosphere, shaping your environment so that your influence operates even when you're not present. While others demand to be seen, you orchestrate outcomes from the shadows. You've stopped needing recognition, because recognition is a leash. They can't use what they can't see. You've mastered the rarest art of all, the art of not being noticed until it's too late. You can stand beside your rivals, smile, even nod, while quietly repositioning every piece of the board beneath their feet. By the time they realize you are even playing, the game has already ended, and you were the one who set the rules. And here's the secret most people never learn. Real influence doesn't come from taking up space. It comes from controlling the air others breathe. They feel your energy even when you're gone. They adjust their tone when your name is mentioned. They hesitate before crossing you, even in your absence. That's when you know your presence has evolved into something bigger than attention. It's become gravity. They orbit you without realizing it. They compete with you in silence. They measure themselves against a standard you never even spoke aloud. But none of this comes without a cost. True power demands silence, and silence demands sacrifice. You lose the comfort of being understood. You lose the illusion of belonging. You lose the easy applause that keeps ordinary people afloat. And yet, in exchange, you gain something priceless: freedom. Freedom from the need to perform. Freedom from the expectations of others. Freedom from the exhausting cycle of explaining, defending, and apologizing. You've become untethered, a force that exists entirely on your own terms. The more detached you become, the more their chaos reveals itself. They talk faster. They reach out more. They grow anxious in your stillness. Because stillness has power, it mirrors their disorder back to them. That's why Machiavelli wrote, "Never reveal the full extent of your mind." The moment they think they've figured you out, you lose leverage. So you remain unpredictable, measured, unreadable, sometimes generous, sometimes distant, sometimes warm, sometimes silent. You don't follow a pattern, you create them. And every inconsistency is intentional, because confusion breeds curiosity, and curiosity creates dependence. They begin to need your clarity. They wait for your reaction. They study your tone, your silence, your pauses. They become addicted to the mystery you've built. And you never reveal the formula. You simply let them spiral while you move forward, always calm, always composed. This is when solitude transforms from survival into supremacy. You no longer use silence to hide. You use it to command. You no longer wait out of fear. You wait out of precision. You no longer protect your peace. You weaponize it. And when you finally act, when you finally speak, move, or appear, the world stops. Because they've been waiting so long for a sound from you that when it comes, it echoes like thunder. That's how you win without ever raising your voice. That's how Machiavelli would move today, not loudly, not publicly, but through a kind of invisible force that makes everyone feel his presence long before they ever see his face. And you, the loner who turned silence into power, you're becoming that force. You've walked through every layer of solitude. You've burned through the illusions of belonging, the need for validation, the comfort of being understood. Now, what's left of you is pure, stripped of dependency, hardened by silence, sharpened by time. And this final stage isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself completely. Most people stop once they learn control. They think silence and strategy are enough. But you've gone further. You've learned that the highest form of power is invisibility, not just to others, but to your own ego. Because as long as you still seek to prove something, you're still ruled by the need to be seen. And being ruled even by yourself is still weakness. The true Machiavellian mind doesn't fight with its emotions. It trains them. It doesn't chase confidence. It builds it through discipline. It doesn't search for freedom. It creates it by removing everything unnecessary, every reaction, every attachment, every explanation that once drained you gone. Because now you understand that peace isn't found in control. It's found in detachment. You've stopped measuring yourself by outcomes. You don't need applause, recognition, or sympathy. You act because it aligns with your design, not because the world will notice. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that fortune favors those who prepare, not those who wait for luck. You no longer chase approval or revenge. You move for one reason only, because it's time. And when you do, everything around you adjusts. You don't have to threaten anyone. Your presence does it for you. You don't have to argue. Silence makes them doubt themselves. You don't have to prove your strength. Your restraint already terrifies them. Because now you've reached a point where doing nothing is more powerful than others doing everything. You've discovered something few ever will. The less you reveal, the more they project. The less you appear, the more they remember. The less you explain, the more they believe you know. You've turned mystery into a mirror, and in it, people see not you, but themselves. Their fears, their insecurity, their hunger for your validation. And that is real dominance, to rule without effort, to influence without words, to stand so still that the entire room moves around you. So now you face the final command of solitude, to disappear even from your own reflection, not to lose yourself, but to transcend yourself, to stop negotiating with your emotions, to stop apologizing for your evolution, to let go of the version of you that once needed saving. Because when you stop identifying with your pain, your fear, your need to be understood, you become something unshakable, a force, not a person, a mind that observes without reacting, a strategist who plays both sides of the board and always wins. You no longer chase opportunities, you manufacture them. You no longer wait for timing, you dictate it. You no longer ask for doors to open, you walk through walls. You understand that power isn't loud, it's quiet precision. It's the ability to choose when to speak, when to vanish, when to strike. And when you do finally step forward, the world won't see a comeback. It will see inevitability. Because you never stopped. You were simply building beneath the surface, while everyone else was exhausting themselves in public. So let them think you disappeared. Let them believe you've grown distant, cold, unreachable. Because what they call distance is focus. What they call silence is calculation, and what they call arrogance is sovereignty. You are no longer part of the herd. You've crossed the invisible border and burned the bridge behind you. The man you were dependent, explainable, available, is gone. What stands here now is something else entirely. A quiet architect of destiny. Someone who moves when it matters and vanishes when it doesn't. You no longer play the world's game, you rewrite its rules. You don't wait for recognition, you appear when the noise dies. And when you finally rise from the shadows, it will already be too late for them to react. Because solitude didn't isolate you. It forged you. It made you calm, unreadable, unstoppable. It gave you the one thing the world fears most, a mind that no longer needs anything from it. Move in silence. Build without witnesses. And when you return, let your presence feel like destiny itself. Because you were never meant to belong to the crowd. You were meant to make the crowd remember your absence.